Welcome along, loads on tonight. So is the Tory gambling scandal as bad as Partygate, or has Rishi Sunak just fallen into a trap? The Gambling Commission have got involved after bets were placed on the date of the general election. So there were an unusually large number of bets placed on a July election. Now, as you'll be able to see here, there is a sizable increase in the amount bet the day before Rishi Sunak stood outside Downing Street in the pouring rain. Craig Williams, Mr Sunak's parliamentary private secretary and Tory candidate, admitted to having a flutter. He's now under investigation. Tony Lee, the party's director of campaigns, and his wife, Laura Saunders, the Tory candidate as well in another constituency, are also under investigation. Nick Mason, the Tory party's chief data officer, he's also under investigation. Now, it's reported that other people within the Tory party and government are also being investigated, but they have not yet been named. But has Rishi Sunak allowed himself to fall into a trap here? So there has reportedly never been a conviction for political betting by someone who may have been in the know, and it might not actually even be an offence. So as far as I can gather, Section 42's definition of cheating, as per the Gambling Act, applies when you nobble a horse, bribe a croupier or mark cards, not when you have inside information that your bet is a dead cert. And the head of public affairs at the Gambling Commission is a chap called George Sinnott, who reportedly worked for the Labour Party in various positions for 15 years. Apparently, he also praised Starmer's election as Labour leader on social media whilst he was working at the Gambling Commission. But regardless of all of that, Rishi Sunak came straight out and said this.
I was incredibly angry when I learned about these allegations. In the same anger that many of you will feel and everyone watching. And it's right that they are investigated thoroughly. These are serious allegations. Right that they're properly and thoroughly investigated, as they are being independently, including a criminal investigation, as you'll be aware, by the police.
And now Michael Gove has compared the scandal to Partygate, saying it looks like one rule for us and one rule for them. He also said this.
It is the case that obviously any decision by anyone to use inside information to bet on the election date, that is wrong, deeply regrettable. But I think the individuals concerned are now being investigated, and until that process is concluded, I think it's difficult for me to say more.
I don't know about you, but for me, the tone of both of those things gave the strong indication that everyone's guilty and this is a massive disaster for which they deserve to be hung, drawn and quartered. It also means that Nigel Farage can say stuff like this.
For the Conservative Party, who seem to, these days, resemble something of an organised betting ring. The sheer level of greed and stupidity that leads people right at the heart of government, who know when the election's going to be called to put on bets, is astonishing, but perhaps sums up the self-entitled view that this Conservative Party has after 14 years in government.
And Labour have obviously got stuck in as well, haven't they?
The desperation over this betting story that is going around. That goes to the heart of what the Tories have become. When their first instinct in relation to a general election is not, how do I serve the country? How do I get the message out? It's how quickly can I get to the bookies and make some money? That instinct tells you everything about where this Tory party is now.
Well, not to mention what's been going on the internet as well, with people mocking it up as number 10 to 1 Downing Street or taking the Route 1 approach and turning it into a betting shop as well. So, when it comes to this Gamblegate scandal, what does it mean for you? Is this worse than Partygate? Potentially you might not care that much about Partygate, but you catch my drift there. Or have the Tories just wandered in to a political trap here? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I've got the political editor for The Express, Sam Lister. I also have journalist Benjamin Butterworth and founder of Global Britain, Aman Bhogal. Sam, I'll start with you on this. Is this actually anything to do with Rishi Sunak?
I mean, it's a bit like asking my chief exec to take responsibility for all the stupid things I do outside of work, isn't it? And I'm sure he wouldn't be too thrilled about that. But the problem is, it doesn't really matter if it's right or wrong, if people have done right or wrong. It's broken in the middle of an election campaign, and that is just really difficult. And I think actually on the gambling side, you were mentioning, I think a very small number of people actually knew. So there might have been a big flurry of bets, but they could be people who just... You can sense in Westminster the small changes. You might just get a sense of there's something going on here. Things that normally happen aren't happening, or whatever. Is that breaking the rules? I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because ultimately it looks bad from the outside.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I wonder whether or not Rishi Sunak has wandered into this trap. With that initial response there, I'm so angry about this. I'm very angry about it. I mean, it just implies that, to me anyway, that he knows that everyone's guilty. And that may well not be the case. I just think politically, that was a little bit stupid.
Well, we don't know whether they're guilty, but he will know who was aware of the date of the election, who was close to those conversations. So he may have a lot more reason to be angry than we know at this stage. But I think what it tells you, because, this started off as an investigation because there's something called politically exposed person. And because a candidate had made a bet, regardless of what they'd bet on, they had to report that. And then that meant they had to go investigate all these other people who had placed bets. It went from about 100 quid a day going on the date of the general election to nearly 6 grand on the 21st of May, just before it was called. Now, clearly that is very strange behaviour, that all those people who work at the top of the Tory party suddenly decided to do it. The other consequence is that we know Morgan McSweeney, who's one of the people in charge of Labour's campaign, spotted this and thought, they're about to call an early election. So it was an unbelievable mistake. And the only other thing I'd say is that it shows that the rot isn't just in Tory MPs. The idea that there were potentially people trying to cash in that run Conservative Party headquarters.
We potentially will never know how many Labour MPs put bets on anything, will we?
But well, first of all, I think it'd be unwise to do it. But a Labour MP is not going to have the inside knowledge that the head of campaigns potentially could, and we'll soon find out.
I mean, this is the thing. This is now a big story, okay? But conceivably, people could have put bets on anything going forward, on the way that Labour were going to vote on anything, on whether or not Angela Rayner was going to be made deputy leader. You could put all these, but anyone with any inside knowledge whatsoever. I mean, Aman, I just wonder, is this actually a massive story with serious public cut through? Which, by the way, I say may well be genuinely, or is this just a big media storm?
Well, look, I think I quite agree with Michael Gove when he says that, look, it looks like one rule for us and one rule for them. That is, I think, potentially the cut-through it could have with the general public. Look, let's be honest, the public still care more about immigration, NHS, crime and all the rest of it. However, having said that, let's not forget that Rishi Sunak, when he became leader, he promised us, what did he claim? That the grown-ups were going to be in charge, integrity and all the rest of that. So it would have been better if we didn't face this crisis in 2 weeks from the election. And that's the bottom line of it. Why has the world's oldest and most successful political party has to deal with this? It is because there is a certain issue that runs deep within Conservative Party HQ and the machinery that has to be tended to after this election is done and dusted.
Yeah, I mean, we speak a lot, Sam, about the social contract being broken and how people's taxes are now being spent on things that they absolutely don't want them to be spent on. But I also wonder if there's another aspect to the social contract here, which is an unspoken thing, that people assume that the people governing them are in some way more intelligent or capable. And actually, I think what this shows is that they might all be a bit thick.
I mean, there is something quite basic about it, isn't there? If you are in a position of knowledge and then you use that to go and place a bet and you do it for quite a measly amount.
This is the other aspect, sorry, but you make a great point. 100 quid, I'm going to stop. Wouldn't you bet the house?
Away.
Wouldn't you? I'd be inclined if I was going to go for it. I think I'd bet everything.
Do it, or go big or go home, I think. It's one of those, isn't it? And it's like, you just think, you've thrown away your reputation for hardly any cash. Yeah. It's really silly. But also, there is this really core thing that all MPs kind of ought to remember when they're doing anything. How will this look on the front pages in the morning? And if you are okay with what you've done and you can defend it and you can take that, then fine. But if you know it's going to look bad, why are you doing it?
Yeah, in the interviews for people that wanted to be Labour MPs, one of the questions every prospective candidate was asked was, how would this comment you make look on the front of the Daily Mail? I think the Tories could have done with asking their own candidates.
Let's not forget, how Labour selected its candidates in the last week leading up to the last 2 weeks. Let's be honest. This is an issue that cuts across all political parties in terms of candidate selection, in terms of integrity, in terms of sincerity of what people aspire to be as an MP. And of course, that is something that cuts across really hard through to the general public as to, well, what on earth are these people wanting to do for us when they get elected?
And I think, you know, and obviously I don't think it's as bad as Partygate, to be honest, but the problem is that the consequence of Partygate lies and of PPE contracts to people close to cabinet ministers tells a story that they're more interested in their own benefit than the country's benefit. And so this tells people, that undecided voters, that that is true, that they continue to behave in this way, and that's why it's toxic.
This is another thing where I actually do just think Rishi Sunak does not have the political instinct that is needed to be a successful Prime Minister. We saw it with D-Day. D-Day was a fantastic example of that. He lacks the core gut instinct that you would need, I think, to resonate with. And he let the Tories let Partygate get on top of them, and they've let this get on top of them. They've massively let it, and they're not attacking back. They're not hitting back with anything. You've got Keir Starmer there, perfectly well within his rights to say all of the stuff that he said there, to play that narrative out about how, you know, they would rather go to the bookies than they would think about how they're going to run the country. You've got Nigel Farage on top of a big Union Jack bus, again, well within his rights to peddle this narrative, and the Tories are just wallowing in it. There is no comeback whatsoever for them. I just think, potentially, a bunch of duds.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer, I mean, he's on the moral high ground now, isn't he? And that's where he likes to be. But once he does get into power, if he does win next week, he's going to find all these problems come and hit him pretty damn quick. You know, there is no, there's no kind of party political aspect to stupidity. And so he will be having to defend silly things his MPs have done pretty soon.
This is true.
I mean, look, yes, you know, this is of interest to the public, but more so than anything, I mean, look, tonight we heard on another channel, Keir Starmer say,
There are other channels?
There are other channels. On another
That's
channel,
good, but
on another channel, saying, look, he accepted the decision of the British public on Brexit. But how can we forget that this is the same man who campaigned for a second referendum to reverse Brexit, and those are the issues that
the latest flip flop that we've got literally happened today, right? Which is Labour saying initially, OK, it's really just going to be adults where there's going to be more trans blokes in women's changing rooms, and then the Education Secretary came out and appeared to suggest that maybe they were going to reverse any kind of gender ideology banning in schools. So it like they're coming for the kids now. And then Starmer's forced to retract that. Again, where are they on this? Where are all the Tory attack lines?